Good morning. Welcome back to Morelia. This morning I want to share with you my road trip adventure that starts at the Laredo border and ends here in Morelia at my Airbnb. This journey was definitely full of unexpected moments. I had three very different encounters with the police. I had to deal with some unexpected road conditions, not to mention I was lucky enough to stumble upon some extremely kind strangers. So, hi, my name's Dominique. Today I'm wrapping up what I consider to be a three-part series in my journey here to Mexico. If you're interested in learning about why this 55-year-old grandmother decided to pack up pretty much everything she owned and head to Mexico with her two dogs, or you want to find out how I accidentally ended up learning to play a game I call Border Pong, and maybe how you can avoid that, check out those videos below. But for now, we're starting sort of where the real road trip begins, my journey through Mexico. So once I left the first checkpoint, everything was smooth sailing. I was enjoying the ride. The scenery was beautiful. The road conditions were great. Everything was going well. I was a little bit concerned about making it to my Airbnb before nightfall, but I was pretty sure I was going to be okay. With the hours of delays that took place at the border, I was behind schedule, but I thought I can make this up on the road. And then I hit the next checkpoint. Now I'm traveling in a compact purple SUV with an overstuffed carrier bag. I kind of stand out a little bit, and I'm expecting to be pulled over. And I did, no problem. The officer pulls me over. He wants to see my paperwork. And I'm fumbling for it because I can't figure out where the hell did I put my auto import paper. And he's trying to be patient. And I grab one and I hand it to him. And he's like, no. And I looked and I realized I handed him my FMM. Anyway, so I'm still looking. And he kind of gets a little bit concerned. And he doesn't want to use the Google Translate. I'm trying to tell him I don't speak a lot of Spanish. And while I'm searching for that paperwork, he calls over three more officers. I thought maybe one of them spoke English. So I'm still fumbling, and finally I find it. I remember that Kira, my Weimaraner, Dobie Miggs, had spilt water on it. And I had moved it off to the side, not only to dry, but to try to keep it out of harm's way. Anyway, as it was, I find this and I hand it to him, and he wants to see my driver's license as well. And so I've got that pulled out. And the three officers are just kind of standing there. One sort of approached, and I tried to speak to him in English, and he looked at me like, I have no idea what you're saying. He just stood back and watched. Well, he tried to reach for my driver's license. Now, before coming here, I had watched a lot of YouTube videos that said, don't do it. Do not let any of these officers, take your driver's license or your passport or any other important paperwork. So when he did, I just kind of held on to it. And I was like, and I just held it up. And I was like, please. And I held on to it. And he didn't argue. There was no problem with it. And he's reading it. And the other officers had sort of moved off to the side, like they were looking in my back window at my dogs or something. And he turns to them and he starts saying something to them. And I see them shaking their head. And I heard something that sounded like bebida or something like beverage. They're shaking their head still. And I started to think, here it comes. I remember that beverage, or them asking for a beverage or a Coke or anything like that, meant they wanted money. So the reason that I didn't hand over my driver's license is because they said that oftentimes they will hold your license or your passport hostage and threaten you with taking you in, taking your car away, or whatever else unless you pay them money. So I was grateful he hadn't forced that, but now I'm hearing this. And he comes back to the window and he does. He starts implying that he wants a beverage. And I'm looking at him like, what? Lo siento, solo hablo un poco de español. No entiendo. I only speak a little Spanish. I don't understand what you're saying. And he's trying repeatedly. And I realize he's not giving up. And he's kind of making some hand gestures and pointing over towards my little coins that are on my dashboard area. And so I feign realization. And I'm like, oh, you're thirsty. Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't have any sodas. You can have some water. And I point to my 5-gallon jug that's on the floorboards behind my passenger seat. And I said, I don't have any cups, no tango cups, you know? And he looks at me like, what? And I'm like, but you can have some water, but no tango cups, you know? And he's like, he gave up. He looked at me like I was completely hopeless. Went on the way. Like, he was like, no, and just kind of like tells me to go. And I'm like, okay, thank you. I'm sorry. And I drove away. Honestly, I was really grateful he hadn't pushed it. But I was a little bit proud of myself for having gotten away with that as well. I'm not going to lie. I took off, started heading down the road again. Everything was great. I finally reached my Airbnb much later than planned. It was almost dark. I pulled into a spot that was in front of my building. Honestly, the neighborhood might have looked a little bit rough to you if you are not used to those kind of neighborhoods. To me, it just looked like neighborhoods I grew up in Los Angeles back in the 80s, so it didn't bother me at all. You know, this is Mexico and I'm open. So I parked in front of this building, and it was unfortunately not directly in front of my building because there had been workers there that were in front of the building, so I pulled down next to it. I brought the dogs inside. The apartment was an adorable studio apartment. There was water there ready for them. There was coffee and everything on the counter. It was absolutely adorable. Left them there, come back to empty out my bag. Now, if you missed the first story, this is the second time in this trip today that I will have emptied out my bag, because at the border I had to go through an inspection where I had to empty out my car carrier. So I empty out all of these bags that are space bag compressed, and put them inside the car. It's a soft top. It's not about necessarily the neighborhood. It's a soft top. Anybody could have come by and opened it up and gotten into it. Well, as I'm unloading this car carrier, a woman approached me and let me know I was in her spot. And I apologized profusely. I looked around, I saw a spot open across the street and offered to move. She asked me if I was just going to be here overnight, and I said, yeah. And she's like, don't worry about it. It's fine. You can stay. And I said, are you sure? She's like, I'm going to be fine for one night. Now, this took all place with our broken Spanish, but essentially that was the conversation. I thanked her, finished unloading, went back inside. By this time it was dark, and I got the dogs and we went out for a walk. And I had seen a little park on the corner when I drove past, so that was where I took them. We walked down to the park. I saw there were still a few people out. And so on the way back, I asked one of the gentlemen that was working on his car whether or not he knew someplace. I knew it was late, but someplace I could get some food. And he directed me towards a taco stand, but he told me I should hurry because they were about ready to close. He said, the food's good, but they're about ready to close. You know, you should go. So I did. I got the dogs back inside, headed to the taco stand. The first young man didn't really understand what I was saying, but he called his sister over and he helped me out. I ended up with this beautiful plate 3 tacos. It was more than filling. It was delicious. Cost me about $2.50. I rounded it up to $3 and asked him for directions where I could grab a soda. I wasn't lying to the officer. I literally had no soda. So they pointed me towards a corner store. Thankfully, the woman that greeted me was not only sweet, but honest. I grabbed a Diet Coke, started to give her some money, and she stopped me right there. I was handing her a 50 for a 20 peso soda, which currently 20 pesos is about $1. So she's like, no. And she points down at it, and she could see I had a 20 in my hand. So if you don't know, Mexico's money is very colorful, but the pesos can come in the same color for different denominations. So I was standing there with 2 blue bills in my hand. Only one was a 20 and one was a 50. So I'm trying to pay her with a 50 when I only needed the 20. Thankfully, she let me know and thanked her, and I was on my way. Often people are cautious about who they're going to encounter in a different country or in a different type of neighborhood than they're used to. But I'm going to say, if you have the opportunity to interact with people, even if you're a little bit nervous, do it. Keep an open heart, because every encounter I had that night was met with kindness, and they couldn't have been more helpful. So the next morning, I wake up. I finally get out of bed a couple hours later. The bed was not only comfortable, but I was exploring different options on my phone and different things that I wanted to do. And finally get going, get the car carrier packed up. And I stopped to write a note to the woman who had let me park in her spot. I left it on her mailbox, went and got some gas and some coffee, and hit the road. Back on the road, everything was great again. And I hit the next checkpoint. As I drove up, again, I'm being pulled over, rooftop carrier, and I see there are multiple cars that have what looked like all of their possessions all over the ground. Some were still unloading. So I was ready for that. I was ready for another encounter similar to the one I had just had the day before. This gentleman walks up to my car, literally asks me if I'm an American, and when I say yes, sends me on my way. Literally, he looked disappointed to me. I had to sit for just a second to kind of realize what just happened, and I got out of there. I was not going to give him a chance to change his mind. I took off as quickly as I could and left. So once again, back on the road. Everything was great, but when I thought I was going to reach Morelia, I was told this was a 12-hour drive. Complete 12 jobs. I've driven 14, 16, 18 hours in a day. I expected that reaching it in 2 days, because I didn't want to drive at night, wouldn't be a problem. I didn't account for the fluctuating speed limits. 1 minute you're doing 100 kilometers an hour, then you're doing 55 kilometers an hour. You might drop down to 40, you're back up to 70. It was like this constant fluctuation. Not to mention you had to stop at toll booths. Scenery was gorgeous. I was driving through what looked like a palm tree desert. It was absolutely beautiful, but it definitely took longer than I wanted it to take. I also knew I really didn't want to drive at night. Having driven in the daytime with a different way that they drive here, it's kind of standard that you will drive to the right of the road. And I learned that before coming here. But they expect you're going to drive with pretty much your 2 tires on the shoulder, so that if they need to pass you or they need to pass the car in front of them going the opposite direction, they can fit in between. Whereas we normally wait for the lane to open, here people drive to the right to leave enough space for someone to pass in between. That's a little bit nerve-wracking, and I wasn't sure I wanted to deal with it at nighttime. They also have these topes. They are speed bumps. They're like mountains, and that's no joke. They literally, they're huge, and some of them come in clusters, like 20 or more, that go across the road, while others are like mountain ranges where there might be 5 or 6 backed up next to each other, but they're nothing like I've ever experienced. I did see them and was warned about them, but what I didn't realize, and I mean prior to coming here, was that oftentimes they're the same color as the road. There's also often no warnings about them. The first time I hit one, I was going pretty damn fast, and I swear to God, I thought my teeth were going to fall out. I thought that there was possibility that I had torn up the undercarriage of my car. I almost pulled over to check. This is how concerned I was. But I kept going. But having these cars come at you at night on roads that are not lit very well. Again, this is like, imagine being out in the desert with no street lights. It's really dark. And I've got people coming at me, and I can't tell if they're in my lane or if they're in their own lane. Plus, I've got people behind me trying to pass me, which is a little bit unnerving. So I drove for a couple hours, struggling through this. When finally, at one point, I came nose to nose with a semi-truck. When he realized I was directly in front of him, he's blaring his horn at me. So that was the last straw for me. I went ahead and pulled off at the next exit where it looked like there might be a populated city. Yeah, I couldn't do it anymore. Thankfully, it was very populated. I found a McDonald's immediately and pulled in. I let the dogs out for a walk. I went and grabbed some food. They love double cheeseburgers, so they got their treat. My family, we sort of have a tradition that any country that we travel to, we like to see what they have on the McDonald's menu and see what's different. Whether it's teriyaki burgers in Japan, or you're allowed to order beer with your meal in France. So I got this really interesting barbecue style burger. It was spicy. I'd never seen it before. And it was really good. Then the dogs and I started looking for a hotel. Searching for a hotel with 2 dogs is not the easiest task. And some of these hotels, that I was in a business area that appeared to be quite popular, and there were a lot of hotels, some of them major chains that you would probably recognize. And so I stopped and asked. And for some reason, all of the lines were very long. I don't know if there was a convention, something going on, but it was late in the evening, really late. And every desk had a long line. So I stopped. They would say, no, don't take dogs or they're full. I'd ask them if they had any idea where I could go, and nobody did. I hit about 6 of these before finally finding somebody that said yes. I was thrilled. I was tired. I was exhausted. I made sure she understood that I had dogs. She said that was not a problem. I was grateful. She pointed that my room would be right down there on the first floor. No problem. Until I walked into the lobby with the dogs. She stopped me immediately. She was like, no. And I didn't understand. And I'm like, dogs, I told you I had dogs, and she was like, no. And as it turned out, she thought I was clarifying that it was okay that the dogs were going to stay in the car overnight. That wasn't happening. No, not my babies. So I got a refund, headed back out, loaded back up the car carrier. We're now at number 3 in 2 days that I've had to unload and load this time. Anyway, I was getting tired of that. I was tired anyway. I just didn't want to mess with it anymore. I drove back to the McDonald's where I'd eaten. When I had driven through there, I had noticed that they had a back parking lot. It was pretty dark. It was fenced. I went back there. I pulled into the corner, backed up in there, put up my window covers, and went to sleep. Honestly, I thought even if I can just get an hour, I'll be fine. That dreaded knock comes in an hour, 2 hours. I'm okay with that. Never came. Never came. I got to sleep through the night with no problems at all. Wasn't the most comfortable night's sleep, but I think I was tired enough that it didn't matter. Next morning, I wake up, go and get some gas, get back on the road. I was a little bit concerned because what I was seeing on my Google Maps wasn't exactly what was saying on the signs. And so I checked with ChatGPT, and it assured me, it let me know what it was that I was seeing that was different, how the signs could sometimes be marked differently in different areas. And so I went on my way. Once again, enjoying the scenery, no problems. I think I got a little too comfortable, I'm not sure, but I passed my exit. And I wasn't seeing a place to turn around. ChatGPT, by the way, not sponsored at all. This is just literally what I used. Any AI program you want to use or not, you're going to find that it's more helpful than you might think it is, especially if you're not very familiar with them yet. It assured me that there was a place I could turn off, but that it would take me onto a local road instead of a toll road. And the local roads through Mexico aren't considered to be as well maintained, and they're also not considered to be as safe for tourists. I'm not particularly judgmental, but I'm smart enough to try to put safety first. So I continued on. I was trying to figure out a way to turn around, and I hit the next toll booth. And I asked the woman inside. And once again, she didn't seem particularly comfortable using Google Translate. I've noticed that here. Oftentimes I give people the Google and ask them to speak to it, and they're kind of like, so, but she did want to help. She was determined to help me. And so she gets out of her booth, walks back to the car behind me. I see her talking to that gentleman. He gets out of his car, walks up to my window. He's comfortable with Google Translate, and he has a little bit of English, and I have a little bit of Spanish. So he explains to me that I can turn around and that there is a road back to the toll road going the other direction. So he says, just follow him. And he tells me it's not very far down the road. But I'll tell you what, I am really glad I followed him. I would never have spotted this path. It looked like a little dirt road that somebody had just carved out with their car. You know, I would have driven completely by it. He stopped, pointed for me to turn down that way. I really thought for a moment he was telling me he was heading off that way. But he said, you know, go, he's pointing down there, tells me to go down there. And I looked down and I can see that the toll road is down there, but I wasn't sure what I was doing was legal. It was. By the time I got down there, I could see where there was like an entryway into that road. So, of course, thanked him and went on my way. No problems after that. Everything was wonderful. I hit Morelia. I was really grateful. I was grateful I had made it. I wasn't 100% sure that my SUV was even going to make it to the border, let alone into the center of Mexico. This thing's pretty rough. So I was grateful that I'd made it there, hadn't had any real issues. And I'm driving along, and I realize that I'm about to veer right, and I need to veer left. So I'm at this split. So I jerk real fast over, and I hear the sirens. And I thought, what the hell did I do? And I'm looking around like, is it for me? And there was a motorcycle officer pulling me over. Pretty sure I had just seen him giving a ticket as I had crossed into Morelia. I thought this was kind of like, what? What are the chances of that? So I pull over. And I grabbed my phone off the dashboard as fast as I can. The day before my dash cam had gotten busted, Kira had stepped on the wire and broke it. I tried to splice it back together. I did a poor job. It was now apart again. So I figured my phone would have to do. When he walked up, I pretty much shoved it in his face, let him know I was recording him. YouTube says that if you do that, if you did encounter a shady officer, they're less likely to be shady while they're on camera. I wanted him to know he was being recorded. The problem is we needed the Google Translate, which means I can no longer record him. That being said, we went back and forth with the Google Translate, answering some generic questions. Where was I from? Where was I going? I showed him the address here in Morelia. I mean, I was nearly there when he pulled me over. And every now and then, while I'm talking to him, a Spanish word slips out, like sí or no sé or something like that, or my accent changes a bit. And at one point he questions me about whether or not I really speak Spanish. And so I get this super proud face on I was like, oh yeah, look. And I pull my phone back, show him my Spanish app that I'm learning Spanish, and I get all super proud. And he just kind of looks at me like, okay, sort of thing, right? And he takes my phone from me for, so he can type something out, and he hands it back to me to read. And it says, you nearly killed me. I'm supposed to take your car. And I thought, oh shit. Here it goes. He said that I nearly killed him and he's supposed to take my car. Supposed to me means, but you give me some money and we'll let it go. So once again, not wanting to be taken advantage of, I kind of got that super paranoid, pathetic kind of, not my car, I can't do this, please, no, I don't have any money, I don't have a job, I'm so sorry, it was an accident, that type of thing. And he looks at me and he smiles. Like, he lets me go through this, and then he grins, he gives me this smile, and for a moment that concerned me. I thought, what does that mean? Like, does he want something else? So he takes my phone back after all of that, and he hands me my phone back to read. And it says, I am supposed to take your car. But since you're new here, I'll just show you where you need to go and wish you a good day. We both looked at each other and we both started laughing. And I was thrilled. I'm saying thank you, Honestly, I wasn't worried so much about him taking my car as I was worried about me being extorted. And so he gets on his motorcycle. I knew he already had my address from everything he'd been taking down. Makes sure I can get out behind him. He takes me through some neighborhood a little bit, down a few different streets, points out towards my Airbnb, and waves goodbye. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, what are the chances that you nearly kill an officer, his words, not mine, and instead of writing you a ticket or taking your car or worse, he escorts you to make sure you get where you're going? Hell yeah. Welcome to Morelia. These are the kind of people that I have encountered here in the last 4 months. I'm not gonna lie, I was absolutely thrilled to finally get my car parked inside my building's parking space. I haven't moved it since. That day I was figuring I wasn't driving again anytime soon, not only because this city is extremely walkable. The public transportation is amazing. We can talk about that in another video, but I didn't want to push my luck. I had had 3 encounters already with these officers, and they had gone out pretty well. So I wasn't taking any chances. I parked that car, I unloaded that rooftop bag for the 4th time in 3 days, and I was grateful it wasn't going to be loaded again for a while. So a couple of weeks ago, I decided to take my car out. Cassie had a follow-up vet appointment, which I needed to get her to, and I had made the decision to take my car. If you want to learn more about going to the vet here in Morelia, that's going to be the topic of my next video. So come back and watch for that. But I had the car loaded up. I open up the big metal gates. I start to look down the street and realize I can't get my car out. Both ends of the street are completely blocked off. The road construction, where they're redoing the sewer pipes here, had finally reached my door. And the street was 100% blocked off. I couldn't get out. Decided that must be a sign. Unloaded my car. I did miss her vet appointment that day. But I guess I'm just going to have to wait a little bit longer because it's been 2 weeks. And at this point, I still cannot drive my car out of my gate. The whole road is blocked up and torn up in front of it. And there is yellow tape going across it. So anyway, that was my road trip here. Like I said, if you want to learn more about how and why I ended up coming here, or maybe get some hints about crossing the border, you can check out the links below. But if you enjoyed this video, if you learned anything from it, I'd sincerely appreciate a thumbs up. Maybe a subscribe if you want to be sure to find out when the next video comes out about my vet experience here. I'll be sharing with you what it was like and how much it cost me and what she had done. I hope you enjoyed the video. I am still new at this, so going forward, my videos are going to be more focused on the different events and the different things that I have learned and experienced here or in life in general. But I hope you watched the first 3 and had a chance to get to know me, and that you come back for more. I hope you see me next time at Cassie's vet appointment. Take care.